Cheryl, you can open your eyes now. Cheryl? Are you sure? She asked, her eyes still glued shut. Yes, I promise. You're on top of the building now. Cheryl practically had to pry her eyelids open. She opened them very slowly, still finding it hard to believe that she had just scaled a 15-story building. When she finally opened them, it was Adam's face that greeted her. She breathed a sigh of relief. I made it, she squeaked in delight. And I didn't even faint. I knew you could do it, Adam said, smiling broadly at her. It wasn't too bad, was it? It was pretty awful. I'm just thankful that it's over. Adam started to say something, but a loud grunt of effort distracted Cheryl. She turned around to see Alexander clambering over the side of the building, and she rushed over to help him. Thanks, I got it, he wheezed as he landed beside her. Cheryl peered behind him, searching for the last two members of their party. Where's Mum and Dad? She asked. Alexander, who was still regaining his breath, shrugged. They forced us all to go first in case any of us fell and they had to catch us. They didn't start climbing until I was halfway up. There'll probably be at least another 20 minutes. 20 minutes? Justin's commanding voice sounded from above them, and by the time the siblings had looked up, their father had leapt down beside them. Try 2 seconds. Almost immediately after, Nora jumped down as well. Alexander and Cheryl, who were used to their parents' vast skill set, barely blinked an eye when they appeared out of thin air. Adam, however, had his mouth hanging open in shock. He stammered, how? Not possible. Both of you climbed this building in record timing. Nora only shrugged. I went slow this time. I was a little tired. Justin nodded. 15 stories is nothing, kid. Try 45. Adam could barely believe his ears. I don't think I've ever met anyone like you guys. Ever. Justin patted Adam on the shoulder as he walked by the star-struck scientist. With a cocky grin, he said, That's right. You haven't. Cheryl rolled her eyes at her father. Let's just find the stairwell and get a move on, okay? Stairwell? Nora paused and repeated her daughter's words out loud. Who said we were taking the stairs? What else would we be taking? Cheryl asked. Then all of a sudden she realized something. Don't tell me. In true Nora fashion, she responded in a blunt tone of voice. We're jumping down from the rafters, obviously. Cheryl gulped. From her place on the rafters, she could see Jean and Max arguing with each other. But from where she was positioned, she could barely make out their shapes. From the height she was at, they looked like tiny little dots. I can't do this, she whispered out loud, mainly to herself, but also to Adam, who was directly next to her. What do you mean, Cheryl? Adam asked, keeping his voice low. He nodded to Justin and Nora, who were getting into their position on the other side of the room. You just climbed a 15-story building with no problem. How is this any different? Yes, and that took everything out of me, Cheryl hissed. I feel like I have no courage left at this point. Adam tried to quell her fears. Cheryl, you climbed up it so you can get back down. I believe in you. Cheryl zeroed in on the floor hundreds of feet away from them and immediately began to feel woozy. No, I can't. The edges of her vision started to blend and blur, and her knees began to feel like they couldn't support the weight of her body anymore. But suddenly, out of nowhere, it stopped. Everything became crystal clear again, and all of her lightheadedness disappeared. What just happened? She murmured, and then noticed that something had slipped into her hand. Her gaze traveled down her arm, and she found Adam's hand interlocked with her own. You can do it, he assured her again when Cheryl brought her eyes up to meet his own. But how do you know? Cheryl felt close to tears. What if I pass out on the way down and I mess the entire plan up? What if everything ends up being my fault again? Adam shook his head. I don't want to hear you talk about yourself like that ever again. None of this was your fault from the start, and you aren't gonna mess this up. Want to know how I know? Cheryl nodded weakly. Because the Cheryl Smith that I know isn't afraid of anything, not even heights. But Cheryl tried to interject, but Adam interrupted her. And even if she was afraid of heights, it wouldn't matter, because above everything else, Cheryl Smith cares. A lot. And if there's anyone in this very warehouse that feels the most responsible for those monkeys and their safety, it's Cheryl. Cheryl bit her lip. Adam was right. At the same time, they detected slight movement from the other side of the room. It was Nora. She was giving them the signal that everything was ready to go. It was only up to them now. Adam gave a curt nod to Nora to show that he had seen the signal before turning to Cheryl again. Are you ready? Although every nerve and bone in her body was screaming in resistance, Cheryl took a shaky breath inward. Yes, was the only word that she could muster. Adam and Cheryl got in position, and Cheryl turned to him one last time. She whispered, "But don't let go of my hand, okay, Adam?" I wouldn't dream of it, Cheryl. I'm serious. Adam couldn't help but smile. So am I. Cheryl nodded and braced herself for the jump. Right before her feet left the platform, Adam leaned forward and whispered one last thing in her ear. Want to know how else I know that Cheryl Smith can do this? Before Cheryl could respond, Adam continued, because she has me. And with that, the two leaped off of the platform and down to the concrete floor below.